Going live in. We are live.
Happy Friday, y'all. This is Roz McCarthy here with CannaTalk with Roz. I'm so happy to have everyone on today. Our topic of discussion I'm so passionate about, and we are going to get into it really quickly.
Exciting.
As you know, the Farm Bill has passed. The Farm Bill passed in 2018, and there was a provision in the Farm Bill that makes hemp farming, cultivating, processing, manufacturing, dispensing of hemp products legal in the United States. And so we are going to be talking today about about hemp farming, the ecosystem of hemp farming, and specifically creating cooperatives to compete with big business. So welcome, Eric Range, my co-host.
Hey, everybody. Man, this has been a week. Let me tell you, I know it's been a powerful week for me. I hope it's been a powerful week for you. This is the first full week back from the new year. So happy new year to everybody who's tuning in for the first time. We got some great guests for you guys today and great conversation. I'm looking forward to it. So, I mean, I don't want to take up too much time. Let's go ahead and get into it, man.
Let's get into it, man. So let me introduce our first guest. We have Mr. Jamal Hackler. Jamal is with the Cannabis Club Los Angeles. He's a consultant to the cannabis space, focusing on current and future trends in cannabis. He's a hemp and isolate for consumers. He's a geneticist from about the plant. I can go on and on, but I want to welcome Jamal. Jamal, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your area of expertise is.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. I pretty much have been growing cannabis for about 35 years. You know, came up in Belize as a young child, more like a prodigy, following my grandfather, and he followed his grandfather before him. And put the seed in the earth, you know, grew the plant. So, you know, being the fact that we did that, you know, I brought that culture over here to America with me and pursued a real long, lengthy education, you know, 5 degrees, you know, organic chemistry, you know, a lot of plant sciences just to back up what we already know, because you got to have that paper. So came in through Florida, and so started to distinguish myself from others by, you know, opening up services for people to actually get real healing. So that's been my calling. And so now, being 45 years old, we're ready to tackle the hemp industry. We're ready to go after it as, you know, minorities, and we're ready to do this thing and, you know, make America, you know, let's make America proud again.
I love it, brother. Thank you, Jamal. And let me tell you something. He didn't tell you everything that he does. He didn't go into details. But once we're done,
He's being modest.
He's being modest.
If I could say a word, I just learned something about Jamal just yesterday, man, and it made me get up and go change my shirt. Man, I just learned that, you know, he's an old Navy man, a Navy veteran, a Navy diver, man. So thank you for your service, brother, man. Thank you for everything you've done. And yo, listen, Roz, even more special, man. Jamal was a diver in the Navy, man. And you know, my little brother-in-law, man, he's a diver. He just got out of the Navy, man. And when I heard that about Jamal, man, I fell in love with him even more, man. So thank you for your service. Thank you to veterans up there, all for your service and the sacrifice you and your family made for our country.
So our next guest we have is Mr. Duane. And Duane, I'm not going to hijack your last name.
Stjernholm is the way we say it.
Stjernholm. Duane Stjernholm. He's out of Colorado, and Duane is the co-founder of Colorado Hemp Processing Cooperative. And the CHPC is a true cooperative that provides hemp processing and equipment to the rapidly expanding hemp industry in Colorado. Duane, tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and how you got into the industry.
Sure. Well, I grew up in southeastern Colorado. One of my grandfathers was a farmer. The other was a rancher. So I got the best of both worlds. I got to drive tractors and brand cows. But then I went away for about 40 years and went to college and went to graduate school, spent a couple of years in the Peace Corps over in the Philippines, just learning how the world worked. And then I decided to come back to where I grew up and get into the hemp industry. the hemp industry is got a lot of facets. We want to get into it so it is a commodity like corn or soybeans. And the only way we're going to do that is to grow industrial hemp. And industrial hemp is a whole different ball game from growing CBD hemp or cannabis or anything like that. It's a whole different method. We want to be fully mechanized to sale. We want to get up to hundreds and thousands, if not millions of acres. You know, there's over 80 million acres of corn in this country and 80 million acres of soybeans. And those poor farmers are hardly making a go out of it because the big companies have just come in and monopolized everything and GMO'd everything, and they have to use all these chemicals to grow everything, and they've killed the soil, and the only way you can grow is with all these chemicals. And so we want to do a better way. We want to take hemp, grow it industrially, and use it to remediate the soil, help the farmers, help the hardworking farmers, make money for a change instead of losing their shorts. And hemp can do that, but you got to do it in the right way. And to do that, we need processing equipment that's not been in this country since the 1930s, 80 years ago. So we've got to develop all that. We are reviving this industry that's been dormant for 80 years, but we get to do it with 21st century technology. So that's our ace in the hole. But we want to get up to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of acres, to be able to bring economic advantage to the poor people that haven't been able to do it. And so that's what we're working towards. We're a true cooperative. We're organized as a limited cooperative association, which is kind of a new type of cooperative. Most cooperatives, traditional cooperatives, you have to be in that industry to be in that cooperative. But in a limited cooperative association, you can have the patron members that you have in a traditional cooperative, but you can also recruit investment members to help you get everything funded. And that way, because mostly the patron members don't have the money to help fund $8 million processing facilities. And so it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. But there is some protections in cooperatives. Unlike a corporation, it doesn't matter how many shares that you own of the cooperative, you only get one vote. Whereas a corporation, I have 100,000 shares, I get 100,000 votes, so to speak. So cooperatives are not that way. Also, it protects the patron members in the sense that a limited cooperative association, when we do have excess money payouts from the cooperative, because the cooperative doesn't make a profit, any excess revenues or any excess revenues generated are given back to the patron members and the shareholders. But by statute with an LCA, 50% of a minimum of 50% of the excess revenues distributed have to go to the patron members. So they're protected. That it doesn't matter how many there are compared to how many investor members, they still get 50% of the distributed revenues. So those two things, the only one vote and the 50% mandate that goes to the patron members, that's kind of an anathema to big business and big corporations that want to take this over. And so I looked at all the business models before we put this together, and this one seemed to be the most fair to everybody involved. Right. And that's why we put it together this way. And so we're just working towards, right now, we're working towards building up our shareholders and building up our bank account so we can build our $8 million processing facility. Then once we get our showcase facility done here, we will replicate that around the state. We've divided the state into 6 regions. Okay. And then once we get it in Colorado, we're a little bit ahead of a lot of the other states. And so we want to share all of that with the other states. And so the ideal, the big picture ideal, is to have a cooperative in every state, and then each cooperative owns shares of each other's cooperatives. That way we can share resources, we can share best practices, we can share money, we can share all these things, and keep out the big money guys that want to just monopolize everything. So that's what we're working towards right now.
So absolutely. So what I'm going to do is I'm putting this slide back up. So Jamal, can you tell us from your standpoint of, because cooperatives are not new to you, correct? We've seen cooperatives out in Los Angeles with individuals trying to work together. What have you seen in regards to cooperatives, and why is that so important for especially African American, Hispanic Americans, minority business owners? Why is that such an important piece of how we look at getting into the industry? Why is it so important?
Well, first of all, doing things in coalitions and doing things in cooperatives help give, a large voice to a small people, and so, being the fact that cooperatives are, someone lends their strengths to someone's weaknesses, and you have a few farms that may have some resources that others may not have. It gives them the strength when they don't have that liquidity, that liquid capital available. So cooperatives are strong because it takes like group funding, and puts people together. When you get 10 farmers together, that means you can pretty much fight one corporation, so it's very easy to see, but how it affects the minority community is the fact that, if we start pulling together as minorities in cooperative, I think that the minority footprint would gain a lot of esteem and a lot of, role, we could say synergy in a way, because, a lot of minorities want to be in the industry, but they've been disenfranchised, let's just say it, and so being the fact that they're disenfranchised, it's only one way a minority can, affect any type of, hemp farming ecosystem or be able to start on ground level. It would be, a cooperative. So it would be, for instance, a minority would have, some land, and he would have the ability to supply land, and he has the licensing. Then you would have another minority that would come in, diversified background of whatever minority status would come in and say, hey, I've got a little liquidity, and I've got about 5 others with liquidity. So hey, let's get the seed. And then you talk to a few other minorities that might be able to supply the labor. And so there's a cooperative. And so, you might have, a minority like myself or yourself or Mr. Range or Charles, or someone says, hey, I can take care of the distribution. And so therefore, that's when you diversify a cooperative. It could be in any state, it could be any local, it could be a community. Like even Colorado, they're very famous for starting cooperatives, because you get one farmer that would steamroll into hemp farming, and then you had another, But, the first farmers, I'm sure, if they set up some sort of cooperative to help one another and get established, because, again, I don't think there's any farm or any place out there that can do it alone. So they are very, very highly sought after. If you can form a cooperative, that will work.
Right, exactly.
Duane, I had a question, because, this came up. Roz and I participated in a conversation here in Florida, discussing exactly what we're talking about and bringing different pieces to the table to talk about how we work together and how we advance as a state collectively, and not just individuals looking to get rich in this area and that area. We need each other.
Exactly.
But, and it came up in discussion about how traditional cooperatives were, primarily nonprofit and so on, but that it was this new, way of forming collectives that allowed you to bring in investors. And I see you guys chose that. And so, talk to me a little bit about, from a financial standpoint, if I'm in a state like, say, North Carolina, and I want to start getting together a collective, what type of revenues do we need to have up front, startup revenues, to begin that collective? Because these are the questions that I know we get a lot of in terms of, okay, these ideas sound good, but what type of capital are we talking about?
It doesn't take a lot of money to start it. The limited cooperative associations, they made a national model. The branch of the SEC made a national model, and then each state can take that national model of an LCA and adapt it to their local particular laws of their state. Not a lot of states have done that. I think there's only about 7 or 8 states that have done that. And so that would be the first thing that I would look into. Go to your Secretary of State's website and see if you have limited cooperative associations available in your state. But then it's just a matter of writing out your formulation documents and your bylaws. It's a good idea to have those vetted by a law firm that has some credibility, if that's not an oxymoron. But
there's some good ones out there, man.
yeah. But then it's just a matter of filing that with the Secretary of State, when it's a nominal filing fee. But then you had the way you structure it, the way we have ours structured, just for an example. I'm not saying that ours is the best way or anything like that, or ours is the way to go. But we have two types of members. We have patron members, which are the more traditional people. Those are the people that are in the industry. But because there's 25,000 products that can be made from hemp, almost everybody can be a patron member, because everybody can buy, hemp hearts or a hemp t-shirt or hemp socks or whatever. So, but then you have also the investor members. In our situation, we have 90,000 patron members, and we have 10,000 investor members. Patron shares are only $100, and we kept that low just specifically because we want to get as many people in the cooperative as we can, that are just the regular people that are working hard to build up the industry. Now, the investor shares, those are $1,000, and there is a difference. They still get to vote on everything, but they only get one vote. Doesn't matter how many shares they have. But once we start excess revenue distributions, those monies, a minimum of 50% has to go to the patron shareholders. But we'll take the other 50% and we'll pay back the investor members all of their investment. And then once they're paid back, their share will revert to a patron share, and then they will be able to share in the excess revenue distributions in perpetuity. We try to keep it real simple, and we've made the numbers such that the most investor shares we can have is 10,000. So versus 90,000 patron shares. So we're never going to violate that minimum 50% distribution rule to the patron members. So that's a key point. And again, it's an anathema to the big corporations. They don't want to get involved because they know they can't come in and control everything. And we're trying to raise $8 million for our first processing facility, and then once we pay off the investor shares, you can use those shares again. You can get more new investors. You raise another $8 million, go build your second facility, get that one going, pay off those investors, go to your third facility, and it just keeps going like that. Does that answer your question?
That absolutely does. And for those who are out there listening and you're in your state and you're wondering how do you go back and figure that out, certainly we want you to research and look up the Limited Cooperative Association and see if your state has that available to you, and then begin to talk to your different components. Talk to your farmers in your states. Talk to the folks who are interested in processing, the folks who have other aspects that they can bring to the table, and begin to have these discussions and dialogues about how you guys can enter the industry. I think this is absolutely one of the ways that we should be looking at getting into the industry, and then looking at how we support each other from state to state, because there are going to be products that are made, and we're going to want to get our products out of our state into other markets, and others are going to want to get their products into our markets. And I think when we start from a mindset of working together and collectively winning together, then it makes it easier for us to have these type of pipelines and ways to move products as well.
Yeah, people don't realize this is a huge pie, and if we work together, the pie is even going to get more humongous, and everybody can have a nice slice of the pie without being greedy. If we work together, everybody's going to get a nice slice of the pie. And,
Right.
Hey, Duane, I've got some questions, and I was just wondering if you could help me out.
Sure.
You know, Eric and Roz obviously are very creative, and they can see these things. On my side, I'm more of a simple type of guy that, you know, looks at this from an investment perspective, and I need concrete examples. So let's use your cooperative as an example. Help me understand, who is the customer you're servicing? What are you trying to accomplish? What's your problem? You know, can you maybe expand more on that? Because let's say I'm in the investor mentality. I'm looking to create some passive income.
well,
you know, you're saying, give me $1,000, and I'm saying, okay, but what's a cooperative, or what are you doing, right? Where's my $1,000 going, and what's the risk? Go for it. Go for it. Go.
We, you know, there's basically two types of hemp farming right now, and everybody's gravitated to the CBD hemp market. Now that is fine. People are making good money. 90% of the farmers in Colorado are growing for the CBD market, but that's not really farming. That's more like gardening, in a sense, because I know CBD farmers that don't even have a tractor, you know, but they have a lot of handwork. They have to get female plants. They have to harvest and hang it up and dry it, and they're letting the stalks all go to waste, which we have a whole nother plan to deal with that. But what we want to do is do in true industrial hemp, where our processing facility will produce 4 products: the clean and separated seed. When you do harvest the seed, if you harvest it mechanically properly, you can also get some residual flour, which you can extract into CBD also. So there is a little bit of CBD component, but you also have to have the right cultivar. And then you have the stalks, and the stalks can be decorticated into 2 products. That's the bast, which is the outer fiber, and then you have the hurd, which is the inner pith. And those 4 products will be what we will produce from the cooperative, in addition to a 5th product called biochar that we're going to make out of the CBD and the marijuana stalks that are currently going to waste, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But so what we're raising the funds to build this infrastructure that's non-existent. Most people have gotten into the CBD market. Well, it is very lucrative. But because there's no industrial processing facilities to process the whole plant,
Right?
And that's
okay. So so that helps. Okay, that helps me, because cooperative is a funding mechanism, but what you're actually building is you are building a
processing facility,
and
right.
Your customers are actually smaller hemp farmers or startup people. So if
there are members, and we're going to even have help harvesting equipment, share harvesting equipment, that kind of stuff. But then once we produce those 4 products, we're like the 1st tier processor, and then we will sell those products to the 2nd tier processor, where and they can make paper or hempcrete or hemp supercapacitors or whatever they want to make, you know, hemp seed oil, diesel out of the hemp seed oil, whatever they want to make. But that's the 2nd tier, and that we want to build up a whole hemp village, if you will. We'll be the 1st tier, and then all these 2nd tier processors making their particular products. So they're our customers too. So Jamal, kind of working together with the farmers and the markets.
So Duane, hold 1 second. I want to get Jamal in here, because Jamal, I want to get from your perspective. You've worked with investors and people that are looking to get in the industry or what have you. When they're coming to you and investors and they're saying, hey, I want to get in, are they understanding the breadth and depth, even on the cannabis or the hemp side, of how much they get in, what their return on investment looks like, and what can we do to coach up people to be prepared to ask some of the questions that Charles is asking right now, which are really smart questions?
Well, the first side of it, investors do come a lot and they want to ask and find out about, how they can get involved in the cannabis industry or the hemp industry. And some of them they come in with some knowing experience, some being farmers, and some just being, equitable partners, and some just being capitalists, some being angels. But nonetheless, they all come in and they want to try to hire a liaison or someone, a consultant that can go out and, find them the proper conditions that they can actually work in, so that's what I deal with a lot. But on the backside, when you want an investment, always have a business plan ready that can explain or clarify, your point, just something that can gain their attention and find out if they're receptive. And then from there, if they're really sincerely receptive, I always do my business plan in parts. First, I give them the theme or the story of what I want to do. And then from there, if they're receptive, then, I get them the numbers behind it, and I make sure the numbers are, not like a template that's 2 to 3 years old. Right. It's always evolving. It's always changing.
Right.
Like Google Documents, like all 4 or 5 of us jump on Google Documents. I'm sure we can whip out a business plan that fast.
Sure. Sure.
And so that's what I always encourage someone is to have an organic type of document that when they speak to someone and gives them advice or some feedback, they can go right into that document and be okay sharing it with people you trust. Always protect yourself with an NDA, but share it with people when they want to, take a look at it, because that gets your name out there. And then that still joggles some people's memory when it's like, oh, this guy wants to grow cannabis, this guy wants to grow hemp. And so what it does is put you on a forum to where you're available, you're there. It's just like putting a resume out. But, you protect your numbers, but, the proprietary words, anyone can communicate an idea, but only you can communicate the idea that you want to be able to put out in your project. So for me, yeah, tons of people can copy it, but what does it matter when they ask them about the project? It's not going to have any substance because you're not in it. Right.
So Jamal, do you also have a project that you are raising through some sort of cooperative means, which is, I would assume, different than Duane? Because I guess this is where I'm trying to get my head wrapped around all this.
Well, I basically, I started a nice, gathering place on LinkedIn called the Cannabis Club, and, it's got about 30,000 different members in it, and they're all diversified, some in cannabis, some investment, some are pilots, everyone that's very curious about cannabis. And so it became so popular, I had to start another profile, and so I'm still strategically helping people. But in the meantime, I entertain investors by having people, come there to have pro bono help, questions answered, business plans. So a lot of the stuff that I do leads into pro bono work that leads me into paying positions. Sometimes it's a staffing position. Sometimes it's a board position, and nonetheless, that leads me into investors by leaving myself open for questions, open for coffee. And so coalitions are great, but when you start coming, that means you don't have any intermediary. You don't have people between you and the idea and functionality of what you want to present.
Awesome. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say there's so many different aspects of this conversation to be had. When we talk about industrial hemp, I get very excited like Duane about, everything that's not for human consumption, or everything beyond the CBD. I get really, really excited about those things. And I think that's going to be the future. I think that's where we're going to be able to create manufacturing jobs and, other things for our community. So that's an exciting part. But I also am very aware of the current reality. And I keep saying it, I heard it in Boston, that, although CBD makes up about 2% of what we can do with industrial hemp, it's taking up about 98% of the conversation. And I recognize that it's the it thing right now. It commands the top dollar, which is why people are there. And I know a lot of folks who are looking into getting into the industry, they're looking at, ways, many are looking at ways to get in right now and how to begin making a profit right now. And there are some opportunities in there. And I think CBD may be, one of those areas that you might look at in that regard. But then the long-term play, I think, for all of our communities, in particular communities of color, we need to be looking at the products that we can make that come from, after Duane says, after that tier 1 and tier 2 processing, we can begin making products, and then that can turn into intellectual property. So, I mean, Charles, I know you're asking questions about from the investor side. When we talk about collectives, it could include every aspect of that. It's not just, the industrial hemp and the farming collective or the processing collective, or, a collective could encompass all of those and become essentially a vertical company and organization, and encompass from seed to sale to finished products that are in stores, that are on shelves. And so we need to be thinking about all of it. The farming collectives, we need to be thinking about the CBD side of it, because there are some real opportunities right now. 2019 is going to offer more opportunities in, I think, the CBD realm than the long-term industrial hemp, because we are still building the infrastructure for that. And we need to be a part of that as well. And so, we got to look at not just the short term, but also the long term, and, have a balance between the two, because there are some areas where we can fit in both.
So that's a great segue. So when we talk about the middle part of it, the processing part of it, Duane, talk about from a $8 million investment, that the machinery that's needed. There's two types of ways to process hemp. So we talk about extraction. There's some folks that have mobile extraction centers, as well as the cortication center. So can we just share, like, where'd you get your numbers in regards to that $8 million for your, I guess, your processing of hemp? And then who is your end customer? And maybe talk about the industries like hempcrete and law circulation material and construction material that would be the second tier people that would want to have your product.
Okay, that's a lot to cover, but the $8 million figure is just from the numbers I put together for the equipment that I need to separate and sort the seed. That equipment's already out there. We can just utilize equipment from other industries there, but those machines are not cheap. And if you're going to be doing hundreds of thousands of acres, you need pretty sizable machines, or a number of smaller machines. And so you have that. We're not getting into the extraction business so much. We will just produce the clean sorted flour, and we'll let somebody else be in the extraction business. That's a second tier thing.
Okay.
First tier, we're just doing that. But then the decortication is the key. Nobody's doing decortication. And that's where the key component parts of the hemp plant really come into play. I mean, the herd, which is the 80% of the plant, is the herd. And you can't decorticate the bushy CBD type plants. You have to grow industrial hemp. You have to start from the very beginning on how you grow it. CBD plants, they typically grow one every 3 feet or 5 feet, something like that. With industrial hemp, you grow 75 plants per square meter. So they're very dense.
Okay.
And so the reason for that is twofold. The first one is that you get them to sprout up, they produce a canopy, and they shield out the weeds. So you don't have to deal with the weeds.
Gotcha.
The second of all is because they can't branch out, they have to grow straight up. And so you get these nice, long, tall plants where you get all this nice fiber from. And the fiber, that's typically been used to make textiles, but there's no infrastructure to make textiles in this country anymore. But there's alternatives. Nobody is using that fiber to make what I call hemp wood. Structural 2x4s, trusses, joists to frame a house, and then you can use the herd from the middle part to make the hempcrete. So you can make the whole house out of hemp, including the structural part and the walls.
Yes.
And so that's just a few of the products. There's hemp supercapacitors. They have the potential to replace every battery on the planet, and they're green. When they've got a million cycle life. when you're done with them in like 1,300 years, you can just throw them away because they're just green. They don't have all those heavy metals in them and everything. That's a huge market that's not even been tapped yet. And so there's all these opportunities. The key is education at this point. I mean, I have to go tell farmers the value of biochar, for example. They don't know what biochar is. We can take the CBD crops and even the legal marijuana stalks and turn those into biochar, and we can remediate the soil that's been damaged by all the GMO chemicals, first of all, and we can increase production of any crop 10 to 30% the first year. So we're going to have a portable biochar oven going out and gathering all these stalks, making biochar out of them, put it right back on the field after we treat it with what it needs to be treated with. And then also you can take that biochar and you can filter water with it. And hemp biochar makes a wonderful water filtration system. And if you do this extra process called oxidatively modify it, you add some ionization to it, it'll even filter out radioactivity. So
And see,
everybody
that goes
deserves
into
a clean glass of water. So
we're
taking
that goes into what I was saying, Ross.
And gonna do that, make these valuable products out of it.
Right. Go ahead, Eric.
That goes back into what I was saying in terms of there are going to be tons of products that we can make, and so we not everybody's going to get into farming, not everybody's going to get into processing, but we need our engineers, we need folks with chemical backgrounds and so on to begin looking at what products we can make from hemp in order to put into the market. Duane, I had a question on Facebook in regards to and I get this question often. How much land do I need if I want to grow industrial hemp? How much land do I need to be profitable if I'm a farmer? Where do I start? What do I start on 1 acre? Do I need, 50 acres?
Yeah. Well, you get the economies of scale, the larger your farm, you could start with 1 acre, but it's hard to mechanically process 1 acre. And you can't afford to have a tractor and a combine and all the other equipment that you need for 1 acre. In Colorado, we have kind of a different system because our water is so precious here. We don't buy land here down where I live. You buy water rights and they throw in the land. So you got to start with making sure you got enough water to grow the plant. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take any more water than corn or alfalfa. It probably takes less than that, depending on what cultivar you're doing. But to do industrial hemp, I would say a 10-acre plot is a good starting point. But there's no right or wrong answers, and right now the CBD market is booming. So if you want to make some money quick, do the CBD market. If you want to do all that hand work, and then transition into the industrial hemp market. The problem now is there's no processing for the industrial hemp, so nobody's growing it. So it's an education process, simultaneously with building the facilities.
So two things I want to cover. Right now, everyone is looking at us on live, and if you're listening to us, I have a slide up, or I have a site up. It's hempinc.com, and Hemp Inc. is a good friend of ours, is Bruce Perlowin. His son, Aubrey Arias, was with us 2 days ago. Hemp Inc. has a decortication plant there in Spring Hope, North Carolina. I've been there. I've actually seen them process hemp or what have you. I just want you guys to see the massiveness of the equipment. The picture can't do it justice, but this is one of the centers that takes it from, it looks like a bale of hay when you first after it's dried out, and you literally can see them put this big bale of hay in a machine and break it down into sawdust so they can then be utilized for different products or what have you. Jamal, my question for you is that we're talking industrial, but you having this background, you talked about working with genetics and working with tissues of different of the cannabis plant and being able to specialize and do clones or what have you. What are you seeing or hearing out there where individuals are taking small greenhouses and creating, doing special strains, and these CBD brokers who say, what do we say to people that go, when a CBD broker comes to them and says, I want to buy, or do you know someone that wants to purchase, or I need, 10,000 kilos of CBD? What are some of the things that people need to be thinking about?
Well, a lot of people, I'll just go in reverse with you. A lot of people, when they want to be able to get isolate, they either go through word of mouth or they go online and solicit through LinkedIn. Again, different methods of, being able to correspond with people. A lot of it's word of mouth, knowing people, because, today's age, everyone's online, everyone's using a platform. So it's usually platform based, and, someone, reaches out, and, that begins the broker cycle. But, for me, I usually go direct. I'm like Duane, a lot of other people, we're connected directly to the farmers, to where they're doing the toll processing, where they're doing the processing for distillate and isolate. So, it becomes just pretty much, a system of correspondence, reaching out to a lab and or someone in the cannabis industry. But preferably, I would reach out to a hemp association or cooperative that could definitely use the funding to be able to continue their cause. So I would always refrain from going through too many brokers. I'd go straight to a cooperative and say, hey, I need, Duane, I need 1,000 kilos. And I know that that'll further his cause and be able to keep them up the float and keep them at bat, And so that's what, would need to be, I would say, be put in place is clearinghouses. That could be a minority cause really quickly, is, being able to, every day update, like Wall Street, update every day on, who's got the hemp, who's got the futures, who's got, how much hemp, what's going to be your COA, what's your quality, and have a central location to where you've got, some of this information in data, but then you have different brokers on different parts of the country in a cooperative. And I'm sure Duane could probably be like, yeah, okay, well, that would be great, because then you start having someone who's centrally, how can you say, connected, that can actually be able to bring some of these real-time prices and some of this order, because there's no order to this. It's still in the chaotic phase.
We're the wild, wild west.
Yeah,
but Jamal, what you're proposing is going to bring order.
Everybody out there right now, and so I prefer a cooperative method. But then when you start dealing with investment, it's good. And so, Roz, to get back to the one part of the question about, breeding and CBD, that's something that I've been involved in my whole life, is storehousing genetics, making sure that we could keep those. It's a historical vial or historical marker in our culture, so to speak. And so what I specialize in is that, Duane's got 50,000 seeds of a certain cultivar. And then what I'll do is, if he says, okay, well, here's 100 seeds, Jamal, of my best, I'll take those and put those in a medium they would use in tissue culture, and put that seed on it, and that seed would taproot upright and grow inside that culture. But we sterilize that seed to be able to be in a sterile environment. And from there, we would undergo cuttings or testing from different leaf structures on it to find out what the analysis is on that plant. If Duane likes it, great. If he doesn't, he says, okay, well, we can either chuck the plant or use it for genetic material. So we'll say we're going to put in genetic material. We'll cut that again, and we'll put that in another type of media or amino acid protein compound that won't allow it to grow, or it'll take root, but it'll actually feed it enough to where it just stays alive for a while. We'll put that in a cold temperature, stick it in the fridge, and it lasts for 3 or 4 years, in that type of way. For me, to answer your question about breeders, everyone's looking forward to unlock that mystery of the DNA behind the cannabis compound, and so everyone wants to know about Delta-9. Everyone wants to know about CBD, CBG, CBN. And so, and we still haven't even touched the threshold of what's really going on until we start, isolating some of these strands. Because, like Duane was saying, you got thousands of seeds. Eventually, someone's going to hit the lottery and say, hey, I got something no one's got. And it's because Mother Nature will let these breedings go on, and these DNA chains will occur. And then you will get a plant that will come out that will be, let's say, usable. Like saying about, tissue. when you're talking about growing plants for stock, you know, and growing them really, really tall, because you have different strands of hemp. You have some that they grow for sweet stock. You have bitter stock. You have some that are, you know, short and bushy. They've been hybridized. You know, some have been crossed with sativa and indica, and then those traits bred back out of them, but still kept the shell of the plant. So really, a lot of people are doing some small breedings for CBD. And yeah, there's a lot of people that can bring in, you know, CBG and get you a kilo of it. And it's, you know, 30 to 40 grand, you know, for these kilos. But again, you know, there's people out there right now that are breeding in small private sectors, small private research grants for cannabis and hemp that will take these tissue cultures or these plants and hand those over to farmers and eventually license those. And what you're speaking about when it talks about a whole, let's say a new industry and jobs, well, I predict eventually that, you know, the seed will always be there, but clones will always be there. But I do believe that eventually when they want to become mechanized unit and be more, how can you say, efficient, they're going to move to tissue cultures to where there's people like me that'll have these things, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 of these things stored out that are ready to go and root, and they're ready to root within so many weeks. And then they're out of the tissue culture and the soil, and they're healthy. They're not sick. They don't have any pathogens from being cut on or being passed on from mom, a sick mother. So eventually, you know, that there's a whole sector of people that could be taught. It could be, you know, minorities. It could be, you know, people who are just strictly farmers. And fortunately, I'm a minority enough to get into this industry and be able to say, okay, this is where I'm going to make my mark. I don't want to be so much of a farmer to where I can supply all the farms in America, and I can subsidize a whole master plan of saying, hey, this is my tissue culture. These are my genetic markers in this thing. It's on your farm. I'm going to license it out to you. I know you're going to produce so much because we tissue culture these things. We grow them out so far. We deliver them. They're not sick. So we know your crop's going to predict this. That's when you can start going into crop assurances and not need insurance. You know.
Wow.
That's eventually what I'm getting into. And as we talk right now, I've seen Trump on 1220. You know, some people have 420. Now the farmers have 1220. You know, it's easier to take the hemp farmer and says, hey, you know, I'm going to support your cause by, I mean, my wife even told me, she says, Jamal, what are you going to do? As soon as Trump was signing, I was like, I'm going to start a tissue culture farm. You know, so really at the end of the day, we have to get good genetics from farmers, have them trust us to where we can take those genetics, storehouse those, because it's history.
Right.
And they can always have a genetic plant that's perfect like their mom. If it gets sick, they come to Jamal's bank and says, hey, Jamal, I need 1,000 of those. The farm burned down last night. I'm saying, here, just take them. I don't want anything for those. Let's license those out. And then once the crop comes in, I'll have futures on those, which we could sell because it's going to be a predictive amount of CBD, THC that's in that. It
Sure.
can be CBD, CBG, CBN. And so, again, there's markets that's going to be creatable and they're going to be sustainable all at once. And so,
do you think, so let me ask you a quick question, and this is for you too, Duane, so I'll let you chime in, Jamal, then Duane, because we're running out of time. But do you think, I mean, how far are we before big business starts coming in? I mean, Jamal, brother, you just blew my mind away in that 2-minute soliloquy. I won, let me say that, because I love it that you are a subject matter expert, and we're going to make sure that folks have your information if they want to get in contact with you. But what should we do as we're seeing, you know, I guess we're sitting on the peripheral and watching to see if big business is going to come in. How do you come into this industry and specialize so much in your soul that you either build a business to sell a business, or you become such a specialist in what you do that they have to embrace or partner with you? That's the best part, is that you increase knowledge. You know, and then so by doing that, when you start increasing so much, people are forced to partner with you. And then so supposing we come together, and then we have Duane, we've got Charles, we've got Eric, we've got Roz, and we start a coalition, a board, and then we get this board going, and then we use some of what we're doing to start affecting other farmers. Like Duane's saying, you can take 10 farmers who have 100-acre plots and produce a 1,000-acre result, right? Okay. And so that's when the Cooperative has 100 farmers that can create a larger result. And so by doing that, you can start pushing big businesses out, big corporation out, by having your own genetic strand, by making sure that you have the genetic code and it's strong, it's healthy to where you're putting out good numbers. But the only thing that's going to supersede any type of business
is research and development. Now, if the industry can get into to privatize research and development now,
Yes.
then they'll survive this onslaught of these big companies coming, because if they can't create an isotope or a compound that's stronger than yours, then what do they got?
Right, and they have to come and partner. They have to come either buy you out, or they have to. Duane, your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, big business is already jumping into they're just standing on the sidelines salivating, just waiting to jump into it. You know, big tobaccos bought half of a huge cannabis company in Canada. Big Constellation Brands, which is big beverages, they've jumped in with billions of dollars already. Again, my biggest vision as to how we can work together is just do the cooperative method in the cooperative model in every state, and then every cooperative is a shareholder in every other cooperative. So we have common ground, we have common goals, we have common resources, we have sales and marketing to market all the products. We can develop new products. We can do R&D. You're not going to keep that big money by just sitting on the sidelines. You're going to have to do something. You're going to have to perform so that there you. But in the cooperative model is an anathema to them, so they don't want to get involved in that. So
Okay.
stick to the
We
cooperative
got
model.
a question over here.
Out.
Go ahead, Eric.
We got a question over here for Duane. We're getting a lot of questions, guys, and these guys have so much information. We just want to let them pour into you all. So we're apologizing if we can't get to all of the questions today. But someone had a question for you, Duane, in regards to when you, how soon are the plans to open up cooperatives in some of the other states? I know you guys right now are building Colorado, and I assume that's the first. But
4 different other states this week, and
okay.
Our favorite.
Is Oklahoma one of those?
Our favorite word is collaboration. So any way we can help other states get started with their model, we're willing to help them.
Okay, and so Eric, before you go on, so you may not have to wait on your state. I mean, if you have a state that has a cooperative business model there to get a license or to do business, look for that. But when he says he's waiting on the state, if you guys are out here and you're listening to us and you hear us right now, someone has to be the leader. Someone has to take the role and say, listen, I want to start a cooperative in my state. I'm going to find the farmers. I suggest you join InfraMM, because we got people in our organization right now who are ready to go, and we're in 24 different states. And Duane, I know I can get a commitment from you and Jamal that you will help us. If we have folks that want to form these cooperatives, that they will help them to figure out what the infrastructure is, help them to understand, the kind of start point, right?
Exactly. Yeah, well, I'm more than willing to help anybody that wants to do it, because that's the way that we're gonna be successful and take this industry that's been dormant for so long and bring it into the 21st century.
Right, and we got a long way to go.
The regular people, not the bankers or the venture capitalists or all of those guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. Jamal, were you going to say something?
No, I was just saying I agree, because I travel the country a lot, and I go back and forth to Belize, and I'm in South American countries all the time. That's my homeland. But I'm observing everyone getting into hemp, and Duane has so many great points when he says it's strength in numbers. And so you're right. You're not gonna ever destroy the tide of big business, but everyone's hoping someone will be bought out in 3 to 5 years. But like Michael Jordan, he was only one man who affected a whole game. So really it's the mind state of the people. It's the mind state of your natural competitive self of saying, hey, I'm not in competition with anyone but myself. And so in doing that, if you perfect your A game in this market, you get your cultivars, even big tobacco would have to respect the plant. They have to respect Mother Nature. So Mother Nature is the one thing that always will balance out, all of it. If you have the right cultivars, doesn't matter how big they get. If somebody wants to buy your pack of stuff on the shelf, they're going to buy it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Eric, any more questions you got going on there, or what are we looking at? Charles jumping in?
Yeah, we definitely definitely have questions. I think the one thing to note, and before we get into more questions, is I think for people who are tuning in, this is definitely still early stages, right? We're not even probably past the first inning yet on hemp. So we're getting lots of specific questions saying, hey, can I put money in this? Or, oh, are we ready to invest in this? Or, oh, what's your product?
It hasn't even been legal for a month.
Right, right.
Well, exactly, right. But I think that's the good thing to bring up to everyone, that, hey, if you're listening in now and everyone's saying, hey, am I too late to get into marijuana, or is it too late? The reality is now's the time, right? The rules are still being written, and whether Duane does stuff or Jamal does stuff, or we end up working with Roz or Eric or everyone out there, now is the time to get involved and also recognize that there isn't a defined business model, because it's all about possibility. So it's about getting the groups together. Just like Jamal, you said you've built a 30,000 strong group, and you've set yourself up really well. I think the best question to ask somebody is, and maybe you can start, Duane, or Jamal, you can start, how do we get involved? How do we get started? How do we just even get in on the conversation? Obviously, we want to tune in to Roz and Eric every Friday. So that's step one.
And become a member of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, because we will have folks like Duane come in and we do specific topics. We will touch on just the cooperative model. We'll touch on, the genetic side of it. We do these types of conversations as an organization internally for our members. We do this live talk every week because we want to make sure that everybody is getting as much information as we can put out there. But we get into more specifics when you join the organization as well.
Absolutely.
And that's what I was going to say, is that, if someone wanted to join and get involved in cannabis or hemp, I'd talk to Eric and Roz, because that's who I'm getting involved with. And me, I've been in industry for 35 years, and now that I understand their methods and what they're doing, I want to be able to support their cause and be able to bring more push and synergy to their role. Because,
right.
I always says, when you see something good, it's irresistible. And I always say that, if it has a smell of sweet fruit, I'm rolling with it. So your cannabis, your smells, and everything you guys have going, I'm going that way with you.
Hey, brother, we thank you for that. You can't
bring the papers.
As you're in California, let me tell you guys, we got 2 minutes. First and foremost, Duane, please share with everybody how they can get in contact with you. Jamal, if you have on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn as well. I can't thank you enough, because it's critical that we learn how to work together. And I'm going to put this down, and because I'm an African-American woman, my Black folks, we got to work together. We have to take opportunity. We have been penalized about this plant, about cannabis for so long, and we have an opportunity. Just find a leader in your state. I see you, Natalie Bonner in Mississippi. You got Dave Beckford in Missouri. You got Sean Tolliver in North Carolina. I'm calling out people I know with InfraMM. I don't care who you are. If you're listening to me, if you're trying to figure out how do I go create your own cooperative, and then figure out how to go from there, because we're going to get the resources for you. If you're part of InfraMM, if you hear us, if we touch you, we're going to get the resources. We're going to help you. And so, Duane, tell them how to get in contact with you, and as well as Jamal, once Duane's done.
Yeah, we have a website it's in process. It's not done yet, but you can go there and you can get some information. And that website is COHPC.org, Colorado Hemp Processing Cooperative, but it's CO Hemp Processing Cooperative, COHPC.org. Or you can send us an email at info@cohpc.org.
And I have it up on the screen right here.
If you hit that contact us, I think it comes up there. Maybe.
There you go.
There's a phone number. There's the email right there. So
perfect. Duane, thank you, brother, for being on with us today. Jamal, tell them how to get in.
My pleasure.
No, I love it, man. You coming back for sure. Jamal, tell them how to get in contact with you if they want to reach out. Besides calling InfraMM or contacting InfraMM, tell us, how can we stay connected?
Well, first of all, I want to go ahead and say, your organizations, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, is the first way to get in touch with me. Other than that, I would like to say that they can Google my name, Jamal Hackler, Jamal Hackler on Google, and I'll come up because I'm authentic, I'm real, and I'm obtainable. So, I'm proud to say that I'll be working with the minorities for medical marijuana, and doing some cooperatives. So really, thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being on. Charles Wu in Chicago, Illinois, is always bringing the great questions and breaking it down to the ridiculous. Brother, we thank you. We appreciate you. Eric Range, sign us off, man.
Woo! Let's just say, as they said, we haven't even gotten to the tip of the iceberg. This is we haven't even gotten a full month in. And I'll tell you, this conversation is a snippet of the conversations I've been having all week long. It is a very exciting time in this industry. And I hope that you guys are hearing our call to get involved. That's why we do this. That's why we take time out of our schedules every week to give you guys this information, because you guys have to get off the sidelines. And so I hope you have had a powerful week. Enjoy this weekend, spend some time with your family, get some rest, get rejuvenated, and let's hit the ground running on Monday. And we will see you guys back here next week on CannaTalk with Roz. Signing out.
Thank you guys. Blessing.